Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cactus Lounge. I am Donna Reed. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, and I traveled in 1976A and up with people. And my guest today is Brenda Moran. Hi,
Hello, Donna. How are you?
Brenda. Good. You know what I realized? I don't know
What?
what your maiden name was when you traveled.
Well, it was Shabbat. I was from New Hampshire. It's a French Canadian name. And yeah, so I've been Moran more years than I've been
I,
Shabbat. So there you
I'm
are.
like, I didn't know her then, so I don't
There
know.
you go. That's
That's right.
right.
But I did remember East Coast,
Yeah.
that piece I remembered. So you traveled in 77C. So did you see a show during the bicentennial back east, or had you already seen a show?
I had seen a couple of shows. There's a very active group in our community that brought them in a few times, and then I interviewed with the Bicentennial group. So yeah, so that's when I got my acceptance letter and came just after I graduated from high school.
So was it spring of 76 when you saw a show, or do you
It
remember?
was summer. It was
Oh,
summer of
you were the
76.
summer. So did you then leave right away? Like interview?
No. The summer of 76 is when I saw the show.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was a whole
So
year
you had a
after
whole
that I went
year.
back. Mhm.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
that's a little bit like I was. Whenever the other day everybody was talking about when was the show at Blossom Center, and in my brain, I was thinking it was before I traveled, and then no, it wasn't. It was 76. I was just trying to remember. So you were right out of high school too. So was
I
I.
was. I was. Yep.
Fresh
I
out
was
of high
very
school.
young and didn't turn 18 till I got on the road. So
And
yeah.
I, a week before June 28th, and then we left in early July. So I was,
Yeah.
do you ever look back on that and think about what you thought you knew as an 18-year-old? Like, because I kind of thought, oh, I graduated high school. Like, I had this idea about life and what up with people was going to be.
No, I can honestly tell you no, because um, my family wasn't one that traveled much.
Okay.
And so I knew this was going to be an adventure and something that I had never seen before, because truly New England states are small states. And so
Yeah.
you go around there and that's pretty much it. And so we really didn't take long vacations anywhere else other than to the coast. And it was like 20 minutes away from us. So at
Where are you
that
going? You going
point,
to?
the big trip to Boston was about as, and that was 45 minutes. So, knowing that I
Interesting.
was going, across the United States to Arizona, which was, a whole different thing.
Yeah.
No idea, none of the heat and I mean, none of it.
Right.
Plus, I am prone to motion sickness. So even in Up with People, it was a real challenge for me to travel on the buses and planes and things of that nature
Wow.
because I would get sick.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that was interesting about my tour is that traditionally there were many casts that found it hard not, for the women at least, not to gain weight.
Uh-huh.
For me, I lost weight because I couldn't eat
Because
on
you
the
were
bus.
sick a lot.
I was sick. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a wonderful experience, and I sat in the front of the bus and I tried to take every precaution that I could, but I couldn't eat on the bus, nor could I eat before
Wow.
I left, and I couldn't eat lunch most of the time, and that's just the way it was. And so
Has that changed through the years? Do
no,
you no.
nope,
Wow,
no,
you
yeah, I still get
because
motion
I
sickness.
was that way a little bit as a youngster, and then I would fall asleep in the back seat of the car.
Yeah,
My dad said, "You missed the whole trip," and I'm like, It's Indiana cornfields instead of Ohio. I know."
sure.
All of that. How
No,
interesting.
no, no, but
So,
it can't stop you from traveling, and that's the thing is you just say,
no.
okay, well, all right, here we go. Get
Yeah,
your emphasis bag and off you go.
and there you go. Yep. So, 77C, you guys have been a very cohesive group.
Mhm.
It seems like, every cast is a little bit different. And because of reunions, which is, I think we met at reunions, not on the Board of Governors, right? We were not on
Right.
the Board of Governors at the same time.
No, we
Okay.
were not. No, we were successive, I think. I think you came in after I was involved with the
Right.
board in the late or the early 90s up through 2000 and on, right? And then I stopped and I believe you started on that. But
Yeah.
we also met because the fun of going to reunions that are not yours is actually meeting a number of people there. The concept that it's just your cast
Right.
and that's it is you really lose out out there because there are so many other people that are fascinating and fun and could be friends for life
Yeah.
and just amazing. And it's great to go to other things. And that's why serving on the board is a real matter of interest as well as expansion of Up With People to you. And I think people who traveled on the road for several years understood that
Hmm.
because you met, so many more people that it was like, okay, yeah, this is Up With People and this is where we
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Um, so yes, our cast is very cohesive. Don, you're going to laugh. Tomorrow, I go to Kansas City. There are 7 of us women who are going to write our obituaries. So I know, there was this,
Oh my God, that just gave me chills.
I know, it's kind of fun actually, really,
Yeah.
because here's the thing. There was an article in the AARP magazine. Okay, for those of you who don't know, it's an the adult aging. Anyway, so the AARP magazine had this thing in February that said, hey, think about this. Grab your friends and talk about it and see what you can come up with. Well, these 7 women are just hysterical. And so we're going to see, we're going to try an AI one and we're going to try, do you put in things that you are wanting to do? Is it going to be funny? Is it going to be heartfelt? I mean, what are we doing here? And so,
I love this
so yeah,
idea.
so we're getting together with a lot of wine and a lot of good food and are going to sit and laugh and laugh and laugh. But the concept is that at some point this is going to happen and
Right.
you want to help your children get through
Right.
some of that. And so preparing for these things are inevitable. And but why do it alone? And why do it,
Oh my,
without the benefit of your friends who can say, "Oh, don't forget this," and "Oh, you're more like
I'm
this."
going to tell my cast this because I have a 76A ladies chat group,
There you go. Yep.
and it's certainly not everybody, but it's the ones that are on the most and just like, so oh my God. Caleb says to me that he's just going to go to Facebook or these things and he'll just know what to say.
Exactly. But the thing is that right now, as many are in my age group, we are finding, you're kind of sandwiched between, I still have my father, I have a really dear friend who is in the process of passing,
Yeah.
and she is at the point now where she can't really remember, all of the things.
Mm.
And so I didn't know her in her early life. And so having those things where this is where I graduated and this, this year, and just even some specifics that you write down, your kids are, I mean, for them, you've always been their parent.
Yeah, you're
And
just
so
mom. Yeah.
yeah, and that's where your life started at 30 or 35 or, and never, nothing before. And so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, guys, come on now. So, but again, if you don't write it down, if you don't prepare, then
Yeah.
whatever. And you're right. People say, well, you're dead, doesn't matter. It's like, you're right, it doesn't truly matter that
No,
way.
but
However,
there are times that I think I want to be that person floating above the room and see what people say and see if I'm still frustrated with the eighth grader that's in my, And by the way, you said, what did you say? Fantastic favorite friends or whatever. I was going to like, good use of F words, Brenda. Wait,
there we go, see, more F words, Donna,
wait,
they're
wait,
fabulous, there
way
you
to
are.
bring it. Yeah. That's awesome. So, okay, so 77 and then 80. So did you go to college? Did you come back? Like
I
what happened
did.
in those years? Okay.
Yeah, so what happened was this. I took classes while on the road with the University of Arizona, right? And so when I got out, I took some what are known as the CLEP exams. I don't know if they're still
Yeah,
called.
I don't know if they still exist, but I, yeah.
Yes, but so when I entered college, I was a junior, which was lovely. And so it only took me 2 years to go ahead and graduate. I'd hoped to come back as an education staff. I'd hoped to been asked to be back, but really, it was time for me to go to college. So that was good. But then once I graduated, I did receive a call from a couple of the staff members at Up With People and said, "Hey, we do need you to come back. Right now, you're going to do PR first, and then we'll move you into the education field." And I said, "Great, okay, I can do that for a year." And so I went ahead and was there with Cast A. And then they said, "Oh, we have a dire need for schedulers." And so then I was sent out into the field to go ahead and schedule shows for the cast a couple of weeks before they were going to arrive. So they truly did have a need. And I came to the Midwest, and that's how I met my alumni husband,
I
Craig.
was going to ask how,
Yep.
so did Craig, was he in Nebraska? Is that where he was
He
from?
was in Iowa. His father was the president of the board of the bank, and Craig had traveled 6 months after us in '78. And so
That's right. He
they,
was in
they
that
bring
first
me.
cast I did
Yep.
costumes for. Yep.
Yep, there you go. And so he was the alumni contact, if you will. And so he and I worked together to get the contract signed and get everything accomplished and all of that. And then I would come back because there was a nice host family here that I stayed with when we were doing all of these negotiations. And I was in the Midwest, but spending the weekend alone every weekend was no fun. And so wherever I was in the Midwest, I'd get close to Iowa and say, to these folks, and this is the concept here is the woman who introduced me and has been in my life since, is the one that I stayed with. And so I would come back regularly, and Craig would just show up because the host dad would just call him up and say, "Hey, guess who's in town?" So it was kind of one of these things that, at one point I
Wow.
said, "Do you live here? I mean, what's going on? You're here all the time." And then I was looking for my next step in life. And I was here in Omaha and went to Creighton University and went there for a church service and really liked the atmosphere with the Jesuits. And so that's when I decided I would go back to school and get my master's. And they offered me a position on staff as well as my education. And so that's how Craig and I then continued to develop. So that's just kind of where it is.
Wow. I was going to ask you, so I'm glad it just worked right into that. I was like, New Hampshire, different years, like you weren't in the cast with him and stuff like that. So, and then how many children do you have? Remind me.
We have four, two boys and two girls. We have two farmers that are following in Craig's footsteps, and then two that are in the nonprofit world that are following in mine.
Oh,
So,
that's funny.
so
So
yeah, so
you told me because I remember telling you when I went to see Stuart and Regine and how you just have to decide if you're going to go see alumni in these places they live if they're not on the main route to somewhere.
that's
And
right.
you were talking about the cattle auctions, and
Yep.
you said that like I should just come and I'd put my folding chair outside or my lawn chair and watch, and it would be an event. And I
It
was
would be
like,
an event, and I do appreciate that, Donna. And if there are those of you out there that are listening to this conversation and have always wanted to see a working farm, please know that we are a family farm. It's been about 140 years in the process. From this is the fifth generation right now that are working the farm, and other than a few choice words, it's really interesting to see where your food comes from, how farming is now, how it is affected, say, by the tariffs, what's going on, what happens on a daily basis, in all of that kind of thing. And
yeah,
there are 10 that are working on the farm currently, that I feed, as well as Craig's mother, who's turning 95 this year.
wow.
And so they have the big farm lunch and they sit and talk about what they're going to do next, and then off they go, or we serve it to them in the field, depending upon what time of year it is. But there's a lot to it
Oh
that I don't
yeah,
think a lot of people understand, much like any job, right?
right.
But there's something that is, what shall I want to call it? It's heartwarming, really, to see this
And I can't,
guys work
I
together.
find myself thinking how many still exists like this. The farmers that I knew back home that are 5 to 10 years older than me have sold, and some have kids that have taken over, some don't,
Yeah.
depending on what it is. And so I'm sorry, in the book, Farmer Fallow Field.
Mhm.
And I was talking about that in my book club, and one of them said, you mention fallow, but you don't really talk about it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So they said that's a word that if you don't live in the country or near, you might not know what that means. And
True.
we wound up in a really interesting discussion. And I think when I came here and found out Pima cotton came from Pima County,
Yes,
I
it
was
does.
shocked because to me, nothing should grow out here, right? I mean,
Right, right. No, it does take a lot of water. Now that is true. And when you say that, it brings me back to my very first host family. Again, New Hampshire has very rocky soil, so there's not a lot of farming. That's not the industry you're going to get.
no.
You're going to get logging and fishing and, tourism and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I lived with a cotton farmer, and that was in his family. And it was just like, holy God, I have no idea what's going on here. But it was pretty amazing. And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's where you really are out of your comfort zone, and that's where you really learn.
Yeah.
And so, when I was thinking about Marion Craig and looking at the farming aspect of it, I mean, my aspirations initially would be a state senator. And I thought, there's just no way here, because
Yeah.
even after 40 years of marriage, there are things about farming that I still don't
Oh,
understand.
I'm
I mean,
sure.
it's very complicated. And so, I couldn't represent well and in the farming state, I didn't think. But so that was, but even back then, it was like, wow, there's I never had given it a thought. The milk showed up at the doorstep, and you
Right.
went, get the groceries, and
Yeah.
where does this come from? Well, it comes
Yeah.
from the grocery store. Well, yes, but right. So
Right,
it's
right.
a
No,
different thing.
and I remember what, because my dad grew up in a small town in northeastern Ohio, and as an older person or adult, he would say, "How come you don't know this?" And I said, "Dad, we're townies.
Yeah,
You lived on a farm. I didn't live on the farm. I see the fields."
right, right.
But it takes
Yeah,
some learning. So, Brenda, when I hope that you feel comfortable with this, you were very involved in the creation of the Alumni Association. And you were also involved in having me interview all of them when they were those that were here in town, which
yeah,
was
yeah,
really, really great. And frankly, I think that the more exposure we get for that, the better, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, but had you been on the Board of Governors at that time when it was kind of the separation between Up With People and the IAA? I wasn't, I was at home in Ohio having babies.
Right. Nope, I understand that. And I was in Iowa with having babies. But in 1988 and 89, I mean, as John Parker explains, it started well before that. But the idea is that there was this need for greater focus on alumni than Up With People could do. I mean, the Up With People that we knew and probably continue through all the years was something that was always on the edge. It was always, they always needed more money or more this or more. I mean, and so they really, once you traveled, you were done. And
Right,
they
right,
couldn't focus on you anymore.
right.
And so trying to make these connections, John Park was very good about that. And you heard from Jerry Shausta and Pat Glassner and Mark Konzemius all about the creation of it. Now, I was not there for that, but I continued the legacy in that in the early 90s, I was complaining because it was like, look, Up With People says they're going to give us a newsletter. We get one every 2 years, and then they say, and next month we're going to do this, and then you don't hear from them again. It doesn't work. And so Pat Glassner turned to me and said, well, then do something about it, damn it. Don't just talk about this. And
Gotta love
so
Pat.
yeah. And so I got my Up With People alumni directory. And luckily for me, there was a connection with Dave Martin in Sunbury, Ohio. And in the directory, the first thing I was looking for was an editor. And luckily, Carol Adams with an A, so I didn't have to go too far. And so the three of us got together and said, okay, we're going to put out Upbeat Quarterly. This is what we're going to do. And so we got it all ready and everything else. And then Up With People said, oh no, you've got to hold it. And it's like, oh, so we had to scrap the first edition because
Wow.
it was old news by that time. And I said, I'm not doing that. We're
Right.
going to do it. We're going to do it timely. We're going to get this done. And so we created the next one. And that's what started back in, I think it was the early 90s. And we did that for a period of 6 or 7 years, I think, before I actually became on the board with communication. Timing, I'm really not certain of,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the idea is that we were focusing on the alumni. And one of the things that I enjoyed that is very much like this is, and they have this great program in Canada that where basically they use the telephone. And so I would just randomly pick up the book and call alumni and tell me what you're doing. And it was just so much fun because great conversations, just like you're talking about. We had a Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus clown. I mean, just out of the blue, I didn't know what he was doing, and it just turned into this great story. Or talking to folks that were in certain parts of the world that were experiencing an event. I can remember Willie Cohn sending me a picture of the building that he was working with in Fargo underwater, I believe. And so it was just, I mean, just stuff like this. And I mean, you couldn't make it up. And it was absolutely fabulous because these people are like, you want to know what I'm doing? It's absolutely. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you're hoping to do. Tell me what you've done, whatever. And so Calling All Alumni column was one of my very favorites. And so from there, we did the alumni issue, we did the not the alumni issue, the reunion issues, and then
Right.
we do the award issues and all that kind of stuff. And it ended up coming out and being quite, I mean, the stack of newspapers was quite high. And then we continued to evolve and invite people to come and help. And then others took over. And it was a great way for alumni to communicate and to be involved. And
Yeah.
so we got little cast snippets in the back and where the tour was going. And so people started to
I
say,
remember,
hey,
yeah, there was a whole
we
section that would show where they were coming that,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So then you could see they're coming because a lot of times it was like, I didn't know they were over there. I would have gone a half an hour to
Right.
go to see them.
Right.
So that's part of what it was. And this was before they had a website and all of that. You couldn't get information.
No. No.
So that's how that truly began. And so now, of course, it's evolved, it's online, it's all of this. But the beginnings were where they were that I think helped cement the Alumni Association as well, because you could tell people what you were doing as an alumni association. And that was hosting different events around the country
Right.
and getting people together to do different things. And the people that went down to New Orleans and helped to rebuild after the hurricane and
Yeah. Yeah.
all of those things, if they would have gone unremarked because people didn't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
once we had a communication tool in place, I think that really bolstered the Alumni Association, who had always been doing good work, but no one knew about it. I
Right.
mean, it's just
Right.
the way it was.
Eh,
So once that got into place, and you had your messages from the presidents, and the president up with people as well, and all of that,
Right.
then that helped to help people realize, hey, there's a lot of us out here. We can be doing some of this. We could go over here. We can get together,
Yep.
and then that really strengthened the reunions as well, I think.
Yeah.
So
You know,
that's the kind of thing.
and for me it's interesting because I was in Ohio for 20 years again and then came back here in the year 2000 and I did a couple of things with my cast, of course, but nothing else. So it was here. And you said something earlier about joining the Board of Governors. I was a bicentennial cast with like 8 non-Americans total,
Yeah.
125 people with people. We made up countries,
Just to
So
give, yeah, hello. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, just like a wave that we and then but being here at reunions, that's when you do start to see people and then I'm like, oh yeah, they traveled in 78 and then I did costumes a couple years, that kind of thing. But the Board of Governors was truly, I still have photos from rooming in Vancouver with Karen Nyquist,
Oh, sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And that was the first time that we had roomed together. And then I was with the 84 casts in 2015, along with my son, who all did Midsummer on an island in Sweden, and that would not have happened just from my cast because we
Right.
didn't have those people, you
Nope.
know?
Nope.
So so that piece is just interesting to me. So I have to tell you, the other day, after I interviewed Bob Kelly, and I always want to ask, who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? When I started this, Brenda, I was thinking about it related to the Everyday Hero Awards
Sure. Great.
because we had so little idea about who has done what.
Mhm.
And and for a while, this, the cast reps were everyday heroes before they separated that out and made it a separate one. But I remember thinking about a cast member of mine who had come from a middle class, upper middle class family and taught in the poor schools of Milwaukee for her whole career.
Wow.
And do you know Palmo, Palmo? I don't know, can't think of his last
Okay.
name.
Mhm.
Anyway, he's donated blood every 8 weeks, like 1,000, like in
There
his
you go.
area.
Mhm. That's
And
the
to me,
everyday
those are
hero.
everyday heroes.
They are.
So there's been an evolution in these related to the band members, like the 77 with Fuzzy and Kevin and stuff, who get together, or interviewing the Arizona band and some of those niches and stuff and the relationships that continue. But I was thinking, I want to go back and I want to ask again on the alumni page about the everyday hero thing
Mhm.
because we don't know if it's big, we hear about it, right?
Right,
If somebody's
right.
doing something, but if they're just doing something in their area or their home and they're the people that are behind the scenes,
Mhm.
not the people that are up there for the glory,
Mhm.
those to me are everyday heroes that are worth interviewing, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely.
I
Oh, Donna, I think you're completely right. And the thing is that I think what Up With People missed along the way is that the alumni are their product in the fact that we then go out and do what they've asked us to do, and that
Right.
is to change the world locally. And
Hmm.
so um it's almost like you have this compelling feeling that you want to make your part of the world just a little bit better. It doesn't have to
Right.
be dramatic, right? And there are some that have done amazing things, don't get me
Exactly.
wrong,
Yeah.
but there are also, like you say, a lot of people who in their own way have fostered children and have done a dinner for the community for years and years. And
Right.
it's that kind of stuff that may be unremarked on by a lot of people, but is the very real fabric of how do you keep people together? And especially as we were becoming more divisive and being
Yeah.
able to talk about this. I mean,
Right.
and be able to have those conversations with people from around the world and, really be able to understand how they are affecting what's happening where they are. And it's not the big headlines. No,
Right. It's not.
it's
No.
not. And it's the little things. And I think that's where the songs that the Caldwells wrote then become part of our fabric of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are so many times when you're listening to something going on and you're thinking, oh yeah, there it is. You've got to live in this world as if you
Yeah.
plan to stay, or just these lines, and you're
The one
thinking,
for me that I'm just one person. What can I do? Or
yep,
one to one will change the
one
world.
to
There were
one
two
will
different
change the
songs.
world.
And
Mhm.
boy, I think about that a lot, as you said, because we're in such divisive times right now, and stuff. And so you know a lot of my story. I don't have the energy right now to take on anything really big. So if I can do a little thing that makes a difference for that person who might make a difference for that person, then
Yep.
I'm doing my part. You know, that's
And you are. And the thing is that that's how we as a world and as a society and as a people bring hope. And that
right.
was all that was. What are you for?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And what is this positive energy that you're trying to put into the world where negative energy is very easy?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just
See,
kind of
well,
it.
that's everywhere all the time,
Yeah.
so it's it's easy to have that. So this, I always get this 10-minute warning and
Yep.
then
That's always good.
asking me if I want to upgrade.
Oh, yes.
I'm always afraid if I upgrade that then some of these will be like an hour and a half long and and people's attention spans will be like,
They're going to be like, what?
yeah, isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? So, let me ask you, are the girls that I'm assuming the women you're getting together with in Kansas City, are they all from 77? Are they from all over?
These girls are.
Ah,
However, I will be going to the Olympics this year with others from other casts.
cool.
And part of it again is the people that you meet when you're doing the Board of Governors
Yeah,
things. And others, it just happens that you meet them. And that was, I'm going to Iceland. And so I reached out to a young man, or well, he's my age, from
yeah,
Iceland to say, hey, I'm just coming. Can you tell me about your country? Tell me where, what I should do and what I should see.
yeah.
And he was just very, very gracious. And his story was that he met somebody who had done up with people who was not from Iceland, that they had come to visit, and he decided, oh, I'm going to go do this. And so he contacted up with people and off he went.
I love
So
that.
yeah, exactly. So the thing is that there's this huge, and I mean huge network of people who are more than willing to be helpful should you need it for any reason. And
Yeah,
so I have had the great honor and pleasure of reaching out to folks and saying, hey, can you help me in this situation? I mean, one odd situation was I had a castmate actually call and say, my daughter's just been in an accident in such and such a city. look up in your book, is what she said. Look up in your book and see if there's anything there. And there was. And so
Wow.
that person came to their rescue. And it's just, people the world over, and they are just amazing. And I'm always in awe of the
Yeah.
Uplift People folks. I really am.
When my son was in North Carolina and I put a post online, I've never spent a lot of time in the Carolinas or up in your part of the world. We were in
Sure.
Darien, Connecticut. I've been a couple places, but I haven't been in Maine or, and the number of people from across the years that responded and said, "Hey, what do you need?"
Exactly.
It's fascinating. And my kids will say to me that, they go, Mom, you could go online and you could look something up. I said, or I can put it out on the internet and then a friend will tell me. And then I will probably believe my friend more
That's
than
exactly
maybe
right.
the,
And how
the
are things?
grand AI thing.
Yeah.
Although I have to tell you, so because you're going to do what you're going to do, I can't wait to hear more about that. Um, when I was up with Caleb and Jessica, Thanksgiving to Christmas time, I can't remember. Anyway, we were talking about the Bible story about the birth. And
Mhm.
then we said, please tell us this like a California girl. Please tell us this. Oh
Oh
my
Lord.
God. It was hysterical. I have it saved because I couldn't
You
not
couldn't
save
get
it
that's
with like
fantastic.
in different voices. What would it sound like? Which is exactly who we are and what we do. We have different voices. Our stories are different based on where we're from, our education, all those kinds of things. So,
And yet we can communicate and we can talk to one another and we can reach out when something's happening in your world to say, are you okay? Are
right,
things okay? Can we help you in some way?
right.
And I think that's the basic premise of what Up With People taught us
Yeah.
is connection and how
Yeah.
that is far more important than anything else. And even if we disagree, even if we
Yeah.
don't see eye to eye, right? There
Yeah.
is there is this concept that we are still connected, that we
Right.
don't have to rift. We don't have to be us and them,
Yeah.
us, not us. One of the last shows that, Up With People did.
Yeah.
So it's a lesson that sunk deep, I think. And I think part of it is because of the performance and the words that were flowing through us all this time,
Right.
plus meeting all these host families and learning about them if you took the time to do it.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
it was just an interesting thing on learning how to parent and learning how to communicate and learning all sorts of different things that wouldn't have happened naturally anyway because you didn't have everybody inviting you in their home. Come
And
over to my house kind
I
of
tell
thing.
my children that now. They tell me that if I'd been born in like Berkeley instead of a small town in Ohio, I'd
Mhm.
be an entirely different person. And I said I might be, in some ways. I might have had a voice about what I thought and felt at a younger age or whatever, instead of but at the end of the day, I think that what is it? You and me were just people. See, we can spell lyrics from
We
a
could do
million
lyrics
songs,
all day
right?
long, Donna. Life's a song, right? Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
They wrote some
But
good songs.
they
So
did, didn't they? They did. But I just, that's the thing is Up With People is the gift that keeps on giving in my life. It really is.
me too.
Not only through the friendships and the comments and the fun back and forth and all of that, but the serious discussions when,
Yeah.
I mean, going through aging and having young kids and facing, health scares and, all of those things.
40 or
Um,
50 years of life that
yeah.
you're following. Yeah,
And
agreed.
and old friends are the best. I mean, they've
Yeah,
seen you throughout all this. So either even if you're the king or you're the pauper, it doesn't make any difference because they
right.
just know you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not. We have
yeah.
we have a gentleman in our cast that is quite accomplished, and it's great because he likes to come around us because then he remembers who he is, as opposed to yes, yes, sir, whatever. So it's great fun
That's
because
great.
we've
That's
grown up
great.
together. And
Yeah,
I think that makes a big difference.
I do too. I do
Fun
too.
stuff.
Well, thank you, Brenda. I'm so glad we got this together. I
Too.
appreciate
Thanks,
it
Donna.
so much. I cannot wait to hear about your your gathering. I tell you, I mean, the wheels start turning. I was like, I should do this. This would be good.
It is good. It is, and it's a thoughtful process. It
Yeah,
really is. And
yeah,
I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it, but I also think it's a realization that at some point in time we will not all be here. And that's okay too. And it's just how we are going to hopefully go out as we have lived
as
and
you
and
lived.
and have that positivity and look forward to whatever's next.
I anticipate you will have a lot of laughter and tears. It'll
I
be
think it's
cool.
going to be both. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be both.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm going to
You're
stop the
welcome,
recording.
Donna. You take care now.
I will.
Okay.